The hallway outside room 214 was silent except for the buzzing ice machine at the far end. Daniel Harper sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the unpaid medical bill in his hands while his 8-year-old daughter slept beside him under a thin blanket. He had just lost another job interview earlier that day, his savings were almost gone, and the old motel smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams. Then came 3 quiet knocks at the door. Daniel froze. Nobody visited this place at 2 a.m. He walked carefully toward the door, trying not to wake his daughter. When he looked through the peephole, his heart nearly stopped. Standing outside was his former boss, Mr. Raymond Calloway. The same man who fired him 6 months earlier. The wealthy hotel chain owner leaned close to the door and whispered in a trembling voice, "Daniel, can I come in? We need to talk." Before we continue this emotional story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Welcome to Corner of Kind Choices, where stories of kindness, hope, and second chances remind us that even small acts of compassion can change lives forever. Daniel slowly unlocked the door. The old hinges creaked as Mr. Calloway stepped inside. He looked completely different from the confident businessman Daniel remembered. His expensive suit jacket was wrinkled, his gray hair messy, and dark circles hung under his eyes like he had not slept in days. Daniel crossed his arms carefully. "How did you find me?" Mr. Calloway looked around the tiny room before answering. His eyes landed on little Sophie sleeping quietly on the bed with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. "I asked around," he said softly. "One of the old employees told me you might be staying here." Daniel's jaw tightened. 6 months earlier, Daniel had worked as a maintenance supervisor for one of Calloway's luxury hotels in Chicago. He worked long hours, never complained, and tried to be the best father he could after his wife Emily died from cancer 2 years before. But when the company started losing money, Daniel was among the workers laid off. Just like that. No warning. No second chance. One cold meeting in a glass office had destroyed everything. Daniel had burned through his savings trying to care for Sophie while searching for work. They eventually lost their apartment and moved from motel to motel across Indiana. And now the man responsible stood inside his tiny hotel room at 2 a.m. Daniel kept his voice low so Sophie would not wake up. "You came all this way to say what exactly?" Mr. Calloway swallowed hard. "I need your help." Daniel almost laughed. For a moment he thought he heard wrong. "My help?" Mr. Calloway nodded slowly. "My son is missing." The room fell silent. Daniel stared at him in confusion. "What does that have to do with me?" Mr. Calloway sat carefully in the old chair near the window. For the first time since Daniel had known him, the wealthy businessman looked completely helpless. "My son Tyler disappeared 3 days ago," he said quietly. "He left home after an argument with me. Nobody has heard from him since." Daniel frowned. "Call the police." "I did." "Then why are you here?" Mr. Calloway rubbed his tired eyes. "Because Tyler talked about you all the time." Daniel blinked. "What?" "When you worked at the hotel, you used to fix things together sometimes. Elevators, pipes, air conditioning units. Tyler admired you." Daniel remembered the teenager vaguely. 17 years old. Quiet. Polite. Always following workers around instead of spending time in fancy business meetings with his father. Mr. Calloway continued speaking. "He said you actually listened to him. Said you treated him like a person instead of a disappointment." Daniel looked away. He remembered Tyler once helping him repair a broken vending machine. The kid had stayed nearly 2 hours just talking about life and music while Daniel worked. Back then, Daniel had no idea those conversations mattered. Mr. Calloway's voice cracked. "The police think he ran away. But I found a note tonight." Daniel stayed silent. He wrote your name on it. Daniel's chest tightened. Mine. Mr. Calloway slowly pulled a folded paper from his pocket. Daniel opened it carefully. The handwriting was messy. If anything happens, ask Daniel Harper. He understands people better than you do. Daniel stared at the note for several seconds. Then he looked up at the exhausted father sitting across from him. For the first time, Daniel no longer saw a rich businessman. He saw a scared parent. And that changed everything. Daniel glanced at Sophie sleeping peacefully beside him. He could have told Mr. Calloway to leave. Honestly, part of him wanted to. This man had unknowingly pushed his daughter into cheap motel rooms and uncertainty. He had watched Daniel lose everything with barely an apology. But another part of Daniel understood pain. Because grief recognized grief. You really don't know where he might be? Daniel asked quietly. Mr. Calloway shook his head. Daniel thought carefully. Then something clicked in his memory. There was a place Tyler mentioned once, he said slowly. An old lakeside cabin his grandfather used to take him to. Mr. Calloway's eyes widened. Lake Benton. Daniel nodded. The older man immediately stood up. That place belongs to my family. I completely forgot about it. Daniel grabbed his jacket. I'll drive with you. Mr. Calloway looked surprised. After everything that happened. Daniel glanced toward Sophie again. She's asleep. We can carry her to the car. The older man's face softened with emotion. You'd still help me? Daniel took a deep breath. Being hurt doesn't give me permission to stop being kind. For a moment, Mr. Calloway looked like he might cry. The drive to Lake Benton took nearly 2 hours through dark empty roads. Sophie slept curled against Daniel in the back seat while rain tapped against the windshield. Neither man spoke much. Finally, halfway there, Mr. Calloway broke the silence. I made a terrible mistake firing you. Daniel stared out the window. You did what businesses do. No, Mr. Calloway said firmly. I stopped seeing people as human beings. I saw numbers. Budgets. Profits. But somewhere along the way, I forgot every employee had a family waiting at home. Daniel stayed quiet. The older man gripped the steering wheel harder. When my wife died 10 years ago, I buried myself in work. Tyler needed a father, but I gave him assistance and private schools instead. Rain streaked across the glass. And now he's gone. Daniel finally spoke. You still have time to fix things. Mr. Calloway shook his head sadly. What if he never forgives me? Daniel looked at him carefully. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. The words hung heavily inside the car. When they finally reached the cabin near dawn, the lake shimmered silver beneath the moonlight. A single light glowed inside the old wooden cabin. Mr. Calloway practically jumped from the car before it fully stopped. Tyler. Daniel carried Sophie carefully while following him toward the porch. The cabin door opened slowly. And there stood Tyler. Cold. Exhausted. Frightened. But alive. The teenager froze when he saw his father. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Mr. Calloway rushed forward and wrapped his arms around his son. I'm sorry, he whispered repeatedly. I'm so sorry. Tyler's face crumbled. The boy started crying like a child again. Daniel quietly stepped back onto the porch, giving them space. Sophie stirred awake in his arms. Daddy, she whispered sleepily. It's okay, sweetheart. She rubbed her eyes and looked toward the hugging father and son. Did they find each other? Daniel smiled softly. Yeah. Sophie rested her head against his shoulder. That's good. Inside the cabin, Tyler eventually looked toward Daniel. You came. Daniel nodded. You mattered enough to come looking for. The teenager wiped his eyes. You were always nice to me when nobody else was. Mr. Calloway looked down in shame. Tyler noticed. Then something unexpected happened. The teenager walked toward his father slowly. You can still change, Dad. Those words shattered the older man completely. He broke down crying openly. And for the first time in years, father and son sat together talking honestly while dawn slowly rose over the lake. Hours later, after breakfast inside the small cabin, Mr. Calloway asked Daniel and Sophie to stay a little longer. Sophie sat coloring at the kitchen table while Daniel cleaned coffee mugs in the sink. Mr. Calloway approached quietly. I owe you more than an apology. Daniel shrugged gently. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. The older man handed him an envelope. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside was a job contract. Regional Operations Director. Double his old salary. Housing included. Daniel stared at him in shock. You're offering me my job back? No, Mr. Calloway said. I'm offering you a better one. Daniel looked speechless. Mr. Calloway smiled faintly. Because someone who chooses kindness after suffering is exactly the kind of person my company needs leading others. Daniel glanced toward Sophie laughing softly with Tyler over crayons at the table. For the first time in months, hope returned to his chest. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because kindness had opened a door anger never could. 6 months later, Daniel and Sophie moved into a small but beautiful apartment near Chicago. Sophie started attending a wonderful school, and Daniel slowly rebuilt their lives. But the biggest surprise came one snowy December evening. Daniel answered a knock at his apartment door. Outside stood Tyler and Mr. Calloway carrying Christmas dinner. No one should spend Christmas alone, Tyler said with a grin. That night, 4 people sat around a tiny table laughing together like family. Not because life had been perfect. Not because pain disappeared. But because kindness had connected broken hearts that once felt completely alone. And maybe that is the most powerful thing kindness can do. It reminds people they still matter. Before ending this story, remember something important. Most people are fighting battles you cannot see. The tired cashier. The angry customer. The lonely neighbor. The struggling parent. One kind moment may not erase someone's pain, but it can give them strength to survive another day. Daniel could have chosen bitterness. Instead, he chose compassion. And because of that choice, an entire family found healing. So tonight, wherever you are, choose kindness even when it feels difficult. Because sometimes the smallest act of compassion becomes the reason someone keeps going. And sometimes, kindness finds its way back home when you least expect it. Thank you for spending time with Corner of Kind Choices. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Until next time, keep choosing kindness wherever life takes you.